Hey, how's it going, everybody? Shaun here from ZooBox. Another day, another movie review, and oh boy, do we got one for you today. Today, we're going to be talking about Roland Emmerich's 1998 version of Godzilla. Written by Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, stars Matthew Broderick, Jean Reno, Maria Pitillo, Hank Azaria, Kevin Dunn, Michael Lerner, Harry Shearer, Arabella Field, Vicki Lewis, Doug Savant, Malcolm Danare, and a whole host of others. In classic Roland Emmerich fashion, he's got a fat cast. There's a lot of people in these movies because this is kind of his bag, or it became his bag in the 90s. You know, right before this, he had done Independence Day, which was kind of another movie that was a very like ensemble-driven disaster movie kind of deal. And that's kind of been his career ever since. Since Independence Day forward, he's kind of done disaster-esque movies with big Hollywood casts, you know? Kind of like a modern version of something like The Towering Inferno from back in the 70s. That's just been his deal. That's been his bag. To varying degrees of success. I'm not a big Roland Emmerich fan. I think the best thing he's probably ever done is Stargate, maybe Universal Soldier. Universal Soldier is probably the most coherent movie. Stargate, I have a soft spot for because I really love the cast. I love Kurt Russell, and I think it's a fun adventure movie. But after that, like, he gets these giant budgets, and they are just the most unwieldy movies. And Godzilla 98 is no different. Godzilla 98 is a bad movie. Even separated from the fact that it's like not a good Godzilla movie, which most Godzilla fans, the creators, everything, even Roland Emmerich himself did not like the older Godzilla movies. And the only reason he took the film was because they told him he could do whatever he wanted. So basically what you just get is a monster movie. There's nothing really in here specifically that would make you feel like it was a Godzilla movie. If the movie wasn't called Godzilla and it was called like Fallout or Giant Lizard Attack, you would be none the wiser. You wouldn't think about it and say, oh, that's like Godzilla. He doesn't look like Godzilla. The structure of the movie is nothing like a Godzilla movie. It's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad movie. And the reason why it's bad is that it's fucking boring. I was bored out of my goddamn skull. It takes a long time to put the pieces in place. I mean, you have major characters that don't even meet each other until about an hour into this movie. And it's a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, so there's plenty of time after that too. But it is just so bloated and unwieldy and incoherent and disconnected, and just, I don't understand what they were really going for. I feel like some of it had to definitely do with just the budget and the idea of having to make a computer-generated lizard with all these special effects, because if you've ever seen the movie, Godzilla is only in the movie for about 11 minutes total. 11 minutes of total screen time. It's mostly just the characters either talking about Godzilla or embroiled in this really bad melodrama. All of the actors, I mean, this feels like a payday movie. You know, you get to be on this big budget Hollywood movie. Probably, I'm sure Matthew Broderick made a lot of money doing this movie. I don't know. Otherwise, why would Matthew Broderick want to do a Godzilla movie? I think that's true for everybody. Jean Reno is actually kind of fun. I feel like he kind of understands the movie he's in maybe better than some of the other actors, or maybe it's just his Frenchness that kind of makes his character work. But I enjoyed the French guys in the movie. They're pretty fun. I mean, Roland Emmerich is like a populist filmmaker. He's trying to pander. He's kind of a Michael Bay before Michael Bay became the Transformers Michael Bay. This actually has a lot in common with, I would say, those Transformers movies from the from the early 2010s or the late or mid 2000. When did it come out? 2008, 2009, the first Transformers. It feels very much like that, like in the same mold, cut from the same cloth. You know, you hire somebody like Roland Emmerich because he was coming off of Independence Day, huge movie, but it also had a huge budget. It was, with a huge cast and huge special effects, and most people really like that movie. That's, while not maybe the most critically acclaimed movie in the world, you ask your average person, they're probably going to tell you that they like Independence Day or love Independence Day. I think Independence Day has got some interesting stuff in it, but it has a lot of the same problems all of those movies had, and they're bloated, they're too long. They're kind of laborious to get through. The characters are not that interesting, and having to spend so much time with them ends up being kind of a detriment to the movie as a whole. That movie has Jeff Goldblum, though, and it has Will Smith. So you got a little bit more just inherently interesting kind of movie star people in it that you can kind of attach yourself to. Godzilla is not like that. Godzilla is like if every character was at the level of Bill Pullman. Now, that's not to say I'm not trying to insult Bill Pullman, but Bill Pullman's not a movie star. Like he's a kind of a character actor. He's a good one too, and I actually like him a lot in Independence Day. So that's not a dig at him, but there isn't just that juice, the juice that you want to get from a movie like this that you need to kind of keep you attached to things, because it doesn't have the time really to establish rich, deep characters, right? So you kind of have to hang your hat on star power, and this just doesn't have it. So a lot of it falls flat. It's also kind of weirdly like a comedy. It's got there's a huge chunk of the cast that are actually from The Simpsons, like Hank Azaria, Mo, Abu from The Simpsons. He's one of the main characters in the movie. And so it's like Harry Shearer, if you know who he is, he's from the Christopher Guest movies, but he also does tons of voices on The Simpsons. He's involved in the writing of The Simpsons. But these kind of comedy staples, there's more guys like that in the movie. And there are these kind of comedy staples. So actually, again, it's like another parallel with Michael Bay. Like Michael Bay will fill his like bloated, giant spectacle nonsense movies full of like Coen brothers actors like John Turturro or Francis McDormand. And he kind of does the same thing, Roland Emmerich. He ends up working with a lot of very talented and interesting people. He just doesn't often give them very much to do, because that's not what these movies are about. They're about the spectacle. They're about the destruction. It's like destruction porn. Godzilla, I wish I could say Godzilla was destruction porn. It just doesn't have enough going on. Not enough happens. Like I said, you spend most of the time just kind of hanging out in bad melodramatic form these characters. They're not interesting. They're not even particularly likable. Like nobody endears themselves to you. They're all kind of shitty to each other all the time. Matthew Broderick probably being the only one that doesn't, but Matthew Broderick is like a dead fish. He's just so dead on arrival. He's just Matthew Broderick, which I don't like hate Matthew Broderick or anything like that. And if I were to, compliment the movie, I would say he's probably a bright spot. He's probably a bright spot. Maybe I would believe that Matthew Broderick would be a worm scientist, Yeah, I didn't even read the synopsis. The synopsis is just as vague as the movie is in terms of like, is this a Godzilla movie? Let's just read it for fun. We're 7 or 8 minutes in, but let's read it anyways. A giant reptilian monster surfaces, leaving destruction in its wake as it strides into New York City. To stop it, an earthworm scientist, his reporter ex-girlfriend, and other unlikely heroes team up to save the city. So that could be anything. That could be about literally fucking anything. You could have any monster in there, and it would not make a single difference. Just on a logistical side, the movie is like really bad looking. The cinematography is not very good. It's very dark, and I think a lot of that had to do with kind of just the nature of the Godzilla, the creature they had to create to kind of hide stuff. He's supposed to be much more like agile and more like almost like Komodo dragon-esque. They show you pictures in the beginning of the movie of nukes going off and Komodo dragons crawling around and black and white ominous footage. So it's not supposed to be like the Godzilla monster. And it's super it was a choice. It was a choice they made, and it just did not really work out. Another just a logistical problem, the Godzilla himself, other than the fact that he looks nothing like the Godzillas of the days of yore, he like unrecognizable. You could have called him, Sam, and you'd be like, okay, that's Sam. That's not Godzilla. But he's the proportions, his scale is constantly shifting in the movie for whatever the movie needs him to do, or her actually ends up. Spoiler alert. Either they reproduce asexually or it's a girl. It might be a girl. I think it might be a woman Godzilla. Very progressive, Roland. Dean Devlin, you old Devlin. Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. You'll see like Godzilla crashing through, downtown New York City, and you see the scale of him in buildings, and then the next scene you see him and he's like towering over the Brooklyn Bridge, which would make Godzilla way bigger than he would be to be able to fit through those buildings. So it's kind of all over the place in that sense. And it's never really established very well kind of what Godzilla is, and the things they divine to to figure out Godzilla and what Godzilla wants or needs or whatever is really contrived. It's one of these things where and I get another reason why, you would probably hire Roland Emmerich, and it's very indicative of his later career after this. He did like 2012, The Day After Tomorrow. What else did he do? I don't know why I need to know this, but let's find out. 10,000 BC, White House Down, Independence Day Resurgence. So like Midway was the most recent thing he does, because the guy makes money. Like, he makes studios money. People go see his movies. But it's just like a force of nature movie where people have to go up against the force of nature. Godzilla is a stand-in for a hurricane. It's a stand-in for, the 2012, the world collapsing in on itself or freezing. It's just the same type of deal. It's not like a commentary on the nuclear testing or proliferation of nukes or anything like that. Kind of, that's the thing when you go back through the history of Godzilla, at least in the first few Godzillas, it was very much about the proliferation of nuclear technology. It was kind of a morality tale, a warning, if you will, an allegory for that stuff. And because people will have to deal with the fallout of literally of nuclear testing and nuclear explosions and using nukes in general and nuclear power and not nuclear power per se, but actually, think of Fukushima. So there's all that kind of stuff baked into it in the older movies. This one has no interest in doing anything like that. I've never seen it. It's been a while since I've watched something so shallow. And that's what makes it boring. There's nothing to latch onto. And there's so many characters. It's character overload. And they all get kind of substantial parts, which just rob each other of substance. Because you don't get enough time that feels meaningful with like your main characters. The people because it constantly is cutting away to what's going on over here. What's going on in the mayor's office? What's going on in this newsroom? What's going on with the military people? What's going on with Matthew Broderick? What's going on with his girlfriend reporter? Like, it's constantly shifting all the time. And to the point where it just kind of becomes a mess and you don't know or care about anything that's going on. I had such a hard time getting through this movie. I really had to force myself to finish it. About 90 minutes in, I was like, I could just shut this off. I could just shut this fucking thing off. Why even finish it? Well, I try to be fair, if I'm going to talk about a movie, I want to see it through to the end. I feel like that's a fair thing to do. And so I did that, unfortunately. Because when I went into this, I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it. It had been a long time since I'd actually, from beginning to end, watched Godzilla 1998. Because, in fairness to the movie, the first half hour, you're like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then it just doesn't do anything after that. It's like a movie that has just nothing to say. So it's just set pieces and just characters moving from one set piece, having a little bit of dialogue, and then moving to another set piece. And it just becomes almost incoherent by the end. There's too many pieces to keep track of. And not that the story's complicated. That's not it. It's just mentally, it's exhausting trying to keep track of all these characters in your head and think about their motivations and what they're trying to achieve, because the movie doesn't do any of that for you. It doesn't give you even the slightest inkling. It is, like I said, it's a disaster movie, as if a hurricane just hit and you didn't know it was coming. That kind of disaster movie. An asteroid hits a part of Earth and everybody else has to survive, One of those kind of movies. I wish that it was better. That's an understatement. I wish I liked it. I wish it was a good movie. It's just not. I don't I would love to hear some sort of impassioned defense for this movie. Honestly, I would. I would love to read it or listen to it. So if anybody out there knows of an article or a YouTube video that gives an impassioned defense of Godzilla 1998, I am your man. I would love to hear it. I'd be very curious. Maybe there's some sort of secret symmetry that I'm not aware of. Maybe there's something hidden underneath. But as it stands, it's just kind of the pandering populist garbage, which is kind of what led paved the road for kind of the franchise world we live in today, with the Marvel movies and Disney's kind of takeover of everything, every franchise. It just feels like a part of that. They're these anonymous, amorphous, kind of mediocre to bad movies that kind of aren't really about much of anything. And people just gobble it up, though. I mean, this movie did not do super well. It did okay. I mean, super well, like relative to its budget or whatever. But I think over time and internationally, it ends up doing okay. I think probably what really hurt it was calling it Godzilla. I feel like if you could have found a different angle, maybe they could have marketed it that way. But I mean, people were excited. I remember I was excited. I remember lots of people I knew were excited. I knew like a whole family. They would watch the old Godzilla movies all the time, and they were super stoked about Godzilla '98. And they were super depressed when they came out of the theater, because it's just not a good movie. It's just not a Godzilla movie. It's like I said, it just feels like anonymous. It's an anonymous monster movie. And I wish it was worse. Because it's not good, I kind of wish it was worse, because it just ends up being boring and hard to sit through. Because I have a kind of a rule. I'm like, I don't look at my phone. I close the laptop. I like to give movies my full attention. It's a good habit to get into. And, man, I struggled. I definitely probably peeked at Twitter a couple times while I was watching this, for sure. Because I was just bored out of my skull. It's just so much of it is unnecessary. And it just, like from a half hour in, you're like, it's just not going to end. It just goes, it's like, almost feels like a circular argument. And it just gives me a fucking headache. But anyways, yeah, that's what I think of Godzilla 1998. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it. No more insights. I don't know how insightful this was. It's more just kind of a rant. I wish it was worse. I wish it was a really bad movie. Because then at least you're entertained. There's some value in really bad movies that are made by sincere effort, Not things that are designed purposefully to be bad or to look like a bad movie. I'm talking about somebody trying their hardest and failing. That's a good bad movie. That's why people love The Room so much, right? And The Room is really only fun when you watch it with other people. It's really boring and just a shitty movie when you watch it by yourself. But it's made with love and sincerity. Somebody trying to achieve something. So it makes it more of a mysterious thing, like the artistic choices. Here, it's just like, this is a movie made by committee. Roland Emmerich's sensibilities are just so boring. Kind of like Michael Bay, what Michael Bay turned into. Like his sensibilities for these big budget blockbuster movies are just the worst, which is a shame, because somebody like Michael Bay, or even Roland Emmerich, they've made some solid action movies. I mean, Michael Bay's made The Rock. I'll even give Armageddon a pass, depending on the mood I'm in. His movie Pain and Gain that came out a few years ago, not awful. I actually kind of like that movie. It's all of the qualities that make Michael Bay, and just on a smaller scale. So it's okay that he makes this like kind of mean-spirited comedy, black comedy. And and Roland Emmerich, I mean, I like Universal Soldier, I like Stargate. Independence Day, like, things I like about it. I think ultimately it doesn't work, but I can watch Independence Day and not be bored out of my fucking skull, and that's more than I can say for Godzilla '98. But all right, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. If you would like me to review anything specific, just drop a comment. I would love to talk about whatever you'd like me to talk about. If you would like to keep up with ZooBox and everything ZooBox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for Instagram, for my personal Twitter. And yeah, if you could give this a like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that good stuff. All right, everybody. Adios.